Welcome to the Flightcast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. How's everybody's week so far? Everybody have a good weekend? Get out to the movie theater at all? Hopefully you did, because that has been top of mind, and that's going to continue to be top of mind. We definitely had some chatter about it on Flight Chat this past weekend. I posted my review. I even wrote a written review. That's right, I wrote a written review. And you know what? That's a great segue into the normal spiel that I have to give you with respect to this show and all of my other shows, which of course can be found at theflightcast.com along with my blog postings. Believe it or not, I have returned to writing. Yes, I'm writing again because I had to remind myself that the Flightcast started as a blog before I even started podcasting, before I did anything with Squadcast Media, before I did any of the solo shows. I wrote, and there's a ton of content already there from the last 9 years of the Flightcast existing as a website, but there's new stuff. I wrote a non-spoiler review about Superman, and I also wrote a piece with respect to all of the stupid box office arguments surrounding Superman already. It's only been 4 days, right? It's only been 4 days since the official release of the movie, and we've already got some really silly early box office prognostications that are happening, and they are still early because it hasn't even been a week, right? But either way, if you want to read either of those pieces, they're available at theflightcast.com under the blog section of the website. And this show, of course, is available there as well, which pops up on Tuesdays. Then there's Flightbox, the TV review show on Thursdays, which stay tuned for that one because I'm going to do one of two things with this Thursday's episode, and I'm not entirely sure which one I'm going to do. And part of my decision-making is going to happen probably during this episode because I'm going to talk about some Emmy stuff later on after we're done talking Superman stuff for a little bit, after I'm done talking Superman stuff for a little bit. But that's Thursday, and then, of course, Flight Chat, the listener feedback show, that is over the weekend. We did have about half of you, I would say, chimed in with some early Superman reviews last weekend. I would imagine that we will have more Superman spoiler talk this upcoming weekend on Flight Chat, and we won't just be talking about the movie, we'll be talking about box office, we'll be talking about all manner of things, including the future of the DCU for sure, with respect to this weekend show. So all of that can be found at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And that includes Apple Podcasts, that includes the Flightcast YouTube page, that includes Spotify and Pandora as well, or wherever your podcatching delights take you. And of course, also want to thank everybody that is a member of patreon.com/theflightcast. Hope that you've been enjoying the bonus content there, which includes recently an episode of Friday Flight where I talked about my second viewing of Superman. And also my Flight Speed episode where I got a little raw and uncensored with respect to my box office thoughts yesterday on the way home from work. Stay tuned because those comics that I need to read, the Superman for All Seasons and Superman, All-Star Superman that I was supposed to read before watching the movie at all. Yeah, well, that didn't happen, but I still need to read them, and I still need to record episodes of Flight Report, my comic review show for that, because I got to get back into comic book reading. I got to get back into blog writing, which I have, and I got to get back into comic reading as well. So stay tuned because reviews of both of those comics are coming up on Patreon along with other bonus content as well. And at some point, since unfortunately I did not get a chance to watch Creature Commandos and review it with Scott over at DC TV Squadcast, my fault, before we decided to shutter the website. I still need to watch Creature Commandos and give my review of that show. That will also be an episode of Flightbox that will be Patreon exclusive more than likely. So for those of you who are flight officers, get ready to enjoy that content in the not too distant future, and hope that you're all enjoying the bonus content that is already there. And anybody else who is interested in listening to any of the bonus content, you can sign up to become a flight officer at patreon.com/theflightcast and listen to all the bonus goodness that should be coming more consistently now. So thank you so much for those of you supporting it. Cannot thank you enough for your support to the Flightcast Patreon. All right, let's talk some Superman. Non-spoiler talk with respect to Superman here. First of all, the buzz. Holy shit. Is there anybody listening to this show that has not seen that movie yet? If so, I really hope that you have stayed away from social media of any kind. Because if Threads is any indicator, and by the way, I read an article the other day that suggested that Threads is about to overtake users, like active users, like it's about to overtake X as far as active users. And I just saw the WGA East ditch their X account, and they're on Threads already, but they're also now on BLUESKY, right? As more people leave the South African Nazi hell site and coming over to other social media platforms, right? If that is any indicator, if what's going on Threads right now in the last like 3 or 4 days is any indicator, then you need to stay away from that app and all of social media until you have seen Superman if you care about spoilers. Because it, on the one hand, like it's 50-50. Because on the one hand, all of the buzz and all of the positivity and all of the real excitement and enjoyment and all the emotions, all the positivity surrounding Superman, surrounding James Gunn, surrounding the beginnings of the DCU has been phenomenal. It's been outstanding. This is the most positive chatter I have seen for a DC movie in a long time. I don't even know if the Batman had this much positive chatter. Because here's the thing about the Batman. Batman movies, they succeed. They don't fail at the box office. So there's already an expectation of if the Batman movie is released, it's going to work, right? There's no reason to like overhype it. We're going to like it. The audiences are going to enjoy it. The critics are going to enjoy it. That's just what Batman does by and large, right? He and Spider-Man are essentially Teflon when they release a movie. That has certainly not been the case with Superman for any period of time, to be honest with you, because as much as people love Superman the movie from 1978 and or either version of Superman 2 or both versions, we know what people think of Superman 3 and 4. We know what people think of Superman Returns. We certainly know what some pathetic people feel about Man of Steel. We do. We know that, right? And the fact of the matter is Superman has just been kind of a wishy-washy with respect to like audience perception, right? So there hasn't been a great deal of consistent positivity surrounding that particular character, cinematically speaking, until now. Like, this really has been an incredible outpouring, at least from what I've seen in my corners on Threads. And so, like, to see that positivity and that enthusiasm for the movie and people talking about how many times they're going to see it and how great it is and how much they appreciate it and picking out new details, like, it's not quite to the level of Sinners, but I am seeing people pull some things that I didn't catch in either of my like 2 viewings. I'm going to watch it a third time, by the way. I'm already figuring out when I'm going to go see it in the theaters a third time, which I think at this point in time will be half of Wally's viewings. I believe he completed his 6th viewing not too long ago. But either way, people are picking out details and things that I didn't even catch. I was like, oh, wow, that's a great point. Wow, that's an awesome point. Wow, what an allegory there. Wow, an Easter egg there, right? Like, people are having those types of conversations about this film, and it's great. It's awesome to see. On the other hand, I don't know how to feel about so many people posting clips from the damn movie. I mean, it's really bad. I have never seen, like, this level of, like, gargantuan, like, just, people just flat out, and TikTok, you know, phone in portrait mode, and of course they're posting it to TikTok. Like, I've gone on TikTok, and it's like, here's 3 clips. It's like, oh, okay, we're just leaving these here, and then I see them on Threads. It's like, and some of them have the spoiler, you know, like warning on it. Others do not. And, you know, I will applaud the majority of Threads rather, using the spoiler, like, you know, the new spoiler feature, but not everybody is. And so there's some blatant shit that's being posted out there that's like, oh, if people have not seen the movie yet, and there are people who have not seen the movie. I have a coworker who was not going to get to see the movie until today. He has seen it by now. Like, his plan was to see it shortly after, like a couple hours after we got out of work. And he should have seen it at this point with his son. And I certainly am looking forward to hearing his thoughts on it. But I got another coworker that's not going to get to see it, I think, until this weekend, right? And there are plenty of people that, you know, not everyone in the general audience gets a chance to see it opening weekend, right? And that's why, you know, back during, and what, this was 6 years ago now, amazingly. Can you believe Avengers Endgame released 6 years ago, right? The year before the pandemic, right? 2019. I remember the Russos on Good Morning America. They had a good approach. They told everybody 2 weekends, the first 2 weekends, for a spoiler moratorium, right? Give it 2 weekends before openly discussing spoilers on social media. Yes, people are excited. Yes, they want chatter. Yes, they want discussion. But in the interest of making certain that everybody that wanted to see Avengers Endgame could see it spoiler-free, they asked everyone to please wait 2 opening weekends. And I like that rule of thumb. That's a good, you know, that's a good rule. That's a good barometer. 2 weekends, right? I mean, past the second weekend, okay, at that point, you know what? You've had a pair of Saturdays, you've had a pair of Fridays, right? You've had opportunity, like at least a full week of time, essentially, to be able to see it, whether it's on the weekend, you've had 2 separate weekends or a weekday. At that point, all bets are kind of off as far as social media is concerned. I thought that was a good moratorium, and no one is following that. Absolutely nobody is following that with respect to Superman. And I have at least, like, I don't think I've posted any, like, spoilers, but I have commented on other people discussing spoilers, and I use the spoiler tags. The spoiler tag is there. The feature works for me. I guess people are claiming that it doesn't work for some of them, and it's like, okay, well, I can't confirm or deny that. Maybe they're telling the truth. Maybe they're just making an excuse for not using it. I don't know. But either way, like, for me, when I discuss spoilers, when somebody else brings up a spoiler and I respond, like, with my thoughts on it, I will use the spoiler tag. And I have also tried not to like any of the clips that, people are recording on their cell phones because, obviously when someone follows your account, if you like or repost anything, it'll show up on their feed. And I don't want that for anyone out there that has not seen that movie yet. I don't want to spoil it for people. And that's the weird part is, like, I love the enthusiasm, and these are not clips being shared maliciously. These are clips being shared because people are genuinely excited. They're sharing a poignant moment, a poignant speech that Superman makes toward the end of the movie. They're sharing the end of the movie. They're sharing other parts that, were either inspiring to them or really badass to them. And again, I love the enthusiasm, but holy shit, where are the lawyers? Where are the DC Studios lawyers? Like, my goodness. This leads me to believe, truthfully, that the lawyers have been told to hold off. I think that on some level, this is part of the plan, right? And you listen, anybody that's listened to my shows before, you've heard me talk about the controlled leak, right? And this has to do with my theory on when set photos pop up, right? Whenever we see set photos from any of these movies, and I feel like Superman was also part of this, even though I didn't really talk about it a whole lot because, that those set photos, I mean, my policy on set photos is I don't share them. I try not to call attention to them. I will certainly look at them because I have no patience. But again, just like with the actual movie clips, I don't wish to throw them into the view of somebody that doesn't wish to see them because they are technically spoilers. But to that end, I do believe that the reason that they don't get yanked quite as quickly, like, a lot of times as others have, is because I think the studios on some level, like, want the exposure. They want to see fans react to those pictures and gauge their response. Not that they necessarily change things, but, to try and start building hype and get an idea of exactly what they're going to do with marketing, I think, truthfully. And I certainly feel like the previous DC Films morons did this. And I think on some level DC Studios also does this. I think Marvel does this as well, although you don't see a whole lot from Marvel because they tend to button their shit up a lot, and run a tighter, closer ship, if you will. But, that's Feige and that's, Bob Iger and Disney and all that stuff. They have a different approach, which I'm glad of. I'm glad that they have a different approach to what James Gunn and Peter Safran and the DC Studios people are doing, right? But I think that's part of what's going on with these clips. I feel like the reason the lawyers have not come and smacked the hand of the people on TikTok or the people on Threads or social media where they're posting these clips is because, hey, it's buzz, right? They're generating buzz. And people out there, I think that they're looking at it and going, okay, anybody that's on, like, social media, that doesn't comprise the majority of the general audience. It just doesn't, right? And when it comes to general audience spending money and going to the theater, they're going to look at the critic reviews. They're going to look at the other hell site, Rotten Tomatoes. They're going to look at those scores. They're going to look at the critics and the audience scores. They're going to look at the buzz. They're going to look at the TV spots, that have all of the social media influencers and the quotes and whatnot, which RJ, I don't know if you still listen to the show, but I saw that they quoted you as well. You had one of the earlier social media reactions that and I think I saw them ask you if they could use it on Threads, and they absolutely used your quotation, so congrats on that. But either way, they look at that and they go, okay, we know what the general audience is going to see. We know what's going to drive those dollars, but fan hype, as far as because the people posting these clips are people that, either they've seen the movie multiple times or they plan to see it multiple times. It's not like them seeing the clip is going to dissuade them or others from seeing the film. I think they're considering it a negligible risk, if you will, right? Because it's not the whole movie. It's not like people are posting the entire movie on social media. At least I haven't seen that. I've seen clips. I've seen plenty of clips of some big moments, right? And obviously, if you're somebody that is on social media, but you haven't seen the movie yet, this is part of the minefield that you got to navigate. If you still want to be on social media, you probably should just shut down and come back to Threads or whatever app you use after you've seen it if you're that concerned about spoilers. But I think DC Studios is letting this go for conversational purposes. And I don't know if I 100% agree with it, but I at least see the point. Because in the old days, back in the day, you'd see those clips get slapped down pretty quick. You'd see the lawyers, the cease and desist, and the warnings and all that. And I just have not seen that. And it's been a couple of days. It has been a couple of days, and I saw some more clips today of Mr. Terrific and other quotable and notable scenes that people who have seen the movie have been talking about, and they're still up, and I don't see them getting pulled anytime soon. Now maybe that changes, especially after the movie goes on HBO Max, which I think will be a while from now. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, the buzz and the discussion on social media around this movie, this is the most positive I have seen it for a DC film in a very long time. I don't think we've really seen this kind of buzz. We never saw this type of buzz to this level for any part of the DCEU era, right? And let's take us who enjoyed the Zack Snyder trilogy out of the equation, right? Because there's our buzz and there's how we felt about it, right? But we're talking about, all of the people that hated Man of Steel, all the people that hated Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, right? All those fools, all those pathetic people that I will be happier than for the rest of their lives, right? Because I enjoy those movies and they don't. But those people are now part of the positive discussion. And don't get me wrong, I've blocked a lot of them because a lot of them, they get all red hattish and decide that they're going to, even though this is their victory lap, right? This Superman movie that was not directed by Zack Snyder, that was not written by Zack Snyder, that was written and directed by James Gunn, that has totally got the color palette that they want, the brighter stuff, and has the goofiness and the campiness and all that. Like, this is the Superman movie that they said they all wanted, and even though this is their victory lap, they can't resist taking a parting shot because they really want to stick it to those Snyder bros and those Snyder cultists, right? We need to make them know that you will feel pain. We are laughing at you. This is how you make a comic movie. It's so pathetic. It's so utterly pathetic for them to act like red hats, because they are. Right? This is what people say about MAGA, right? The whole fact that, like, you look at MAGA and you're like, why the hell are they so angry? They won the election. They're guys in power, and they're still screaming. They're still angry. They still, are accosting people on freeways and being all manner of nut jobs, right? Like, they're in victory lap mode, and they're not celebrating. They're still mad. They still want to scream. They still want to yell. They still want to puff their chest out. These people that consistently feel the need to use the new Superman film to attack Snyder fans, it's the same shit. It's the same behavior. Whether they admit it or not, they're acting the same way in that regard. And it's a cult mentality of their own. This is why I say, when I tell people that there is a Snyder cult and an anti-Snyder cult, and you don't believe me, oh, well, your behavior, the proof's right there in the pudding. Let's go to the chart because it matches exactly. Plenty of receipts and plenty of fools that I have blocked in the last 3 or 4 days. And I said this on Threads. I said, look, I have blocked way more people that have weaponized the new Superman film against Man of Steel than I have any Snyder cultist. And I know that there are those out there. I've seen a few, some of the usual suspects out there that, have all manner of nasty shit to say about the new Superman film and all of this box office caterwauling, which I'll get to that in a little bit. I'm not going to rehash what I said on Flight Speed necessarily, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it because we've got some new updates with respect to that information. I've seen a few of the Snyder cultists chirp about this, but not nearly as many as the people, and I mean, verified accounts, and others with bigger audiences that just can't resist getting their parting shot in about how Superman has been restored. It's the best Superman movie in 40 years. Yeah, okay, you pathetic shits. Go right ahead and continue to beat your chest. You are the digital version of the dudes that run at the Mexican people driving and minding their own damn business on the freeway. Those people that are just, going home, minding their own business, and then, random red hat runs up to them and screams to them about how, oh, it's over. What are you going to do? Nothing like that. That's how you're acting. That's how those people are acting, right? And whether they admit it or not, that's literally like that's all it is. And they're just doing it for bait. As I said, they would. We knew this. We knew that they were going to do this. We knew the baiting was going to happen. We knew that they were going to come for anybody that was a fan of Snyder's films, and they puff their chest out, and they should essentially have red hats of their own, essentially. Their red hats should say, no, that's how you make a Superman film, right? Like that's essentially, making Superman great again. That's what their hats should say. And it's not everybody I want to make it clear, it's not everybody that is celebrating the Superman film that is acting that way. It's just the people that we knew couldn't resist taking a parting shot. Those people, right? Like the anti-Snyder cultists that really enjoy this film. But that is the difference this time around, is they're part of the positive discussion, and some of them can keep their mouth shut as far as, being snarky and negative about Snyder's films. Others cannot. The ones that can keep their mouth shut are the ones that don't feel the need to throw that parting shot. Well, they're not red hatters, or they're not acting like red hatters in that regard. And I don't care how they voted in the election. I'm just talking about how their belief or how their behavior matches that of a real life cult in that regard. And we've talked about the presence of two cults with respect to Snyder and anti-Snyder sentiment, and yeah, they're in full force without a doubt. But the positive buzz has been phenomenal for Superman, and for everybody, and the people. And it's funny, since I brought up red hats, I'll also talk about the get woke, go broke crowd. Yeah, another massive L for them. I am more than convinced that all that caterwauling from Fox News and Ben Shapiro and all those fools helped earn this movie money. I'm more than convinced of that, because I have seen multiple people on social media say, I am not a Superman fan at all, and I am tired of superhero films, but I'm going to go see Superman just to piss the red hats off. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that I've seen that sentiment, and I guarantee extra money was made this opening weekend. Extra money will be made, especially with some of the other allegories. One big allegory in particular that, it is completely spoiler heavy, that if you guys want to talk about it, we can on Flight Chat. But there's one big allegory in the Superman movie that people are making a connection to with a real life catastrophe, if you will, a real life situation that has been going on for the past couple of years. They're making that connection, and so that's leading even more people to go, oh, I got to see this movie for that reason, to see that connection. It has nothing to do with whether or not they're Superman fans or whether or not they're DC fans. They're pulling in people who are just interested in the political theater, or I guess the politicized theater, because I don't think James Gunn did this for political means. He wrote the script for this film before that conflict, before that situation, if you will, got, hot and heavy in that regard. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know exactly like what the chatter is about. Like I said, we could talk about this in a spoiler-filled conversation on Flight Chat. But no, the buzz for this, the positive buzz, has been outstanding. It's been really good, and it's the most positive buzz I've seen for a DC movie in a very long time. In fact, I can't readily remember before it. Maybe the Dark Knight trilogy? Maybe going back to the Dark Knight trilogy. That's one thing I can say, going back to the Dark Knight trilogy. And again, I'm talking about general buzz. I'm not talking about us. I'm not talking about Snyder fans, right? I'm not talking about anybody over at Squadcast Media, because you know that 5 of the 6 of us thoroughly enjoyed the Snyderverse over at Squadcast Media. You know that. I'm talking about general buzz, right? From all the people that didn't care or weren't that heavily invested in the Snyderverse stuff, and from the people who hate the Snyderverse stuff. Because their positive buzz is still going to support the film, even though they're morons and I don't need to see their shit ever again. Right? Like, I can still look at it and go, well, I don't need to see your ridiculousness, but at least you're being positive on some level about this movie, even though you feel the need to talk shit about the previous Superman movie, which, by the way, there's nothing you can say or do that will ever erase Man of Steel or Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice or Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder Cut, from existence. Ever. Know that. And the same goes for the Snyder cultists that are hating on the brand new Superman movie by James Gunn. There's nothing they can say or do. And this is why I said, for all the people that were like, well, we've got to warn James Gunn about this boycott campaign. Nothing. Absolutely nothing they can do. Powerless glass jaw pushovers is all they are, right? And they're still whining and they're still crying. And I'll talk a little bit about their whining and crying here in a little bit. But that's all they had. They couldn't stop the movie from being released. They can't stop people from seeing it. They can't stop the success that it definitely had in its opening weekend. They can't stop the success that it has going forward. And they certainly can't stop me from getting my 2-disc 4K Steelbook edition, which I've shared this image, right? The pre-orders are sold out, which, it's interesting to me that, like, Best Buy and other big box stores, Target and whatnot, like, they pull their their media sections out of their stores, right? Because nobody's buying Blu-rays anymore. But it's funny how within like a couple of days of the pre-order link, going live for the 2-disc steelbook of Superman, like those pre-orders are sold out on 3 different sites. They're sold out on Amazon, they're sold out on Walmart, they're sold out on Grove. Have I pre-ordered it already? You damn right I have. I'm all set to go with respect to that. But for all of the no one buys and watches physical media crowd anymore, yeah, beg to differ. Plenty of us are out there still watching and collecting physical media. Myself for sure, and many others as well. I know Scott is. He said, and I watched his. He did a thing over at our the Squadcast Media YouTube page. He's done this new show called Squadcast Corner, and he gave his own 2 cents while drinking liquor with respect to his thoughts on the Superman box office discussion. And in the middle of some great numbers and some great perspective that he offered, he also shouted me out too. I thank my podcast brother for that eternally, of course. But he also talked about how he's going to take his sons to see the movie, so he'll end up seeing it a second time, even though he only gave it a 3 out of 5, and he said his score might raise to a 3.5 out of 5. But he also talked about how he's going to own it. He will own it, and he's a completionist like I am. Like, we both own all of the Christopher Reeve Superman films, and we both own Superman Returns. We both own Man of Steel, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. And we're both going to own Superman in 4K glorious steelbook, a gorgeous steelbook with a slipcover, which, Wally, I really hope that HMV exclusive version that looks like it has the exact same case, I really hope you get the plastic slipcover. I really do, because the slipcover is awesome. Like, basically what it is, guys, if you haven't seen the image, you can Google it and look it up. But basically what it is the actual casing for the steelbook. It's the door to the Fortress of Solitude from the movie, but on the case, the door is open, and Superman and Krypto are like walking through the opening. But on the actual plastic slipcase, the door is closed. So it's almost like an animation where when you remove the slipcase to actually open the case, it opens the door, right? If you will. Like, it opens the door to the fortress and Superman and Krypto appear, right? I really hope that Wallyu's version overseas gets that, the HMV exclusive, because the artwork for the steelbook is exactly the same for the Amazon, Grove, and Walmart pre-order version, but those 3 are getting the slipcover. And those pre-orders will go back active again. Last night, the link went active again for a brief period of time, and then it sold out again, but it'll go active again. So in case anybody is interested in pre-ordering that, just keep an eye out for it. Or join one of the groups that, there's a subreddit for steelbooks, there's Discords and stuff like that I'm a part of, right? There'll be an opportunity to snag it if you wish to snag it. But either way, the positive buzz and, the fact that many of us, have been able to subjectively enjoy the film, and I certainly have my very high level thoughts and high thinking thoughts on the film. My perspective on the film definitely has raised after a second viewing. One of the things that I did mention in Flight Speed yesterday that I will bring up here is that my perspective now is I do, as far as ranking my Superman films, I said earlier, in my review, that I still had Man of Steel as my favorite, but that this Superman film is like right behind it, right, as far as 1 and 2. Well, I have changed that a bit, because my rating for this Superman film, this current Superman film, went from an 8 to a 9 after that second viewing, and certainly after more things that I've been thinking about and processing, and I imagine it'll only get better after a third viewing. This is what happens with Superman movies. This is what happened when I watched Man of Steel. Every time I watched Man of Steel, it got better and better, and I imagine a similar thing is going to happen with Superman. But my thought now is that not only do I give it a 9 out of 10, not only do I consider it to be James Gunn's finest film to date, but I am also willing to say this with respect to my Superman ranking. Man of Steel is my 1A, and Superman 2025, if you will, is my 1B. Yep, absolutely. I still have that slight edge for Man of Steel. It's my 1A. Superman is my 1B. Yes, absolutely. No question about it. That is, I have strong feelings with respect to this film, and I love the fact. I really love the fact that at this point in life, I can push aside all that bullshit tribalism and enjoy both of those films for what they are. 2 sides of the same coin, the same badass Kryptonian coin, and it's fantastic. It's awesome. I can enjoy both of those movies, and when I get that steelbook, I will display it prominently on my Superman shelf, and I will be happier than anybody that hates either of those films, whether you hate Man of Steel or whether you hate the new Superman film. I am happier than both of those idiots. And yes, I will call them idiots because why are you hating the film? Why hate a film? There's no reason to hate the film, okay? I used to hate films. I used to hate Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I don't hate it anymore. Why? Why am I putting that type of negative energy towards a movie? No, not going to do that. I don't hate that film anymore. It's at the lowest, well, not the lowest. Thor: Love and Thunder is below that, but like, it's on the low tier of my MCU rankings. But I don't hate that movie. There's no reason to hate Man of Steel. There's no reason to hate the new Superman film, right? There's no reason to hate it. There's not even a reason to hate Superman 3 and 4. You don't have to like them. You don't have to think that they're good. But why are you hating them? There's no reason. No, that's wasted energy and negativity that is unwarranted and unnecessary. Those movies didn't kick your dog. Those movies didn't crack your windshield or make you stub your toe. Those movies didn't give you COVID. Okay, that's ridiculous. Like to have like that much negative energy for those films, it's silly, it's stupid, and so that's why I call those people idiots. If you hate either one of those movies, you're a moron, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm happier than you because I enjoy both of them immensely, and I will continue to do so because that's how happy I am about both of those films. I like being happy. And so I enjoy both of those films, regardless of what any other pretentious ass gatekeeper on either side wishes to say. And I love the fact that there's nothing they can do about it. Absolutely nothing. Because my joy outshines their hatred. So, just wanted to say that with respect to the positive buzz surrounding the Superman film. All right, now let's talk box office for a bit here because, after the opening weekend numbers came out, and those numbers have been revised, by the way. This is the new information that we have. But after the initial opening weekend numbers came out, this is where a lot of the shit talking and a lot of the silliness started, right? The absolutely inane scoreboard mentality reared its ugly head. And in this case, it was between the DC fandom, right? Sometimes it's Marvel versus DC. Actually, a lot of times it's Marvel versus DC. But of course, in this case, now it's DC versus DC. And it's stupid and it's ridiculous. And you have both sides that are telling the other, you can't judge box office in a vacuum. And yet they're both doing the same damn thing. They're both judging it in a vacuum for their own ridiculous means. But here's the bottom line with respect to box office. Here is the balanced perspective on Superman's box office. It's this. First of all, the numbers got updated. And you know what? I'm going to throw this out there. Like, usually, generally speaking, I've quoted Box Office Mojo as far as like my box office numbers. And this goes all the way back to Fans Without Borders days when we talked about box office on that show, me and Brent did. But here's the problem. Box Office Mojo beforehand used to have an affiliation with Amazon, and now it's like fully owned by Amazon. There's some organizational changes happened within Box Office Mojo and their website. This was, I forget however many years ago this happened, but they changed their website and they do not update as quickly as one would like. They really don't. I've heard that they're still better for like international numbers, but as far as domestic numbers and updating those, they're not nearly as fast. And when the numbers got updated, because it was discovered that apparently the opening weekend for Superman wasn't 122, it was actually 125. It was closer to 125 million that it made in its opening weekend, counting the Thursday previews and the Amazon showing that Shonda and I went to, plus the weekend, right? It was actually a 125 million opening weekend. And that was announced, and people talked about that, and it was, other sites updated it. Box Office Mojo did not update it until like the next day. It's like, what the hell? Why is Box Office Mojo dragging its feet like that? But you know who had it updated quicker? A site that I think I've brought this up before, and if I haven't, I'm bringing it up now. It's called thenumbers.com. Thenumbers.com is owned and operated by Nash Information Services, LLC. And their big claim is that, they're in Hollywood, or they're in Burbank, California, I think. I think they're in Burbank. They're somewhere out west in California. And they talk specifically, like directly to the distributors, directly to who gives the numbers. The studios give them the numbers. Like, they handle direct. And like I've said, I've read that they're better at updating domestic numbers faster than international numbers, which is understandable if they're out in Hollywood. But that's their big claim, is that they get their information directly from the studios instead of like waiting for, other box office sites to update their stuff on social media and the internet. And so they not only updated the opening weekend, but they've also updated with yesterday's numbers, Monday numbers, right? Because Box Office Mojo, in fact, here, let me just make certain, as of the time of me recording this here in the middle, like mid-afternoon, early evening on Tuesday, let me just go to Box Office Mojo and confirm that they have not updated this yet. Let's see. No, Box Office Mojo has not updated the actual domestic numbers for Superman yet. So Superman apparently made 12.9 million domestically on a Monday, which that's a big deal. I mean, it's a bigger deal because it beat out Jurassic World Rebirth with respect to Monday numbers, right? And 12.9 million on a Monday, like even in the middle of July, like that's cool. That's a good number. Right? I think it was I think John R brought up that BVS had like a 15 or 16 million dollar Monday as well. And of course, we know how much money that movie made because we were reminded endlessly that it did not make $1 billion. It only made 873 million. Oh darn. Wow. What an absolute travesty. Yeah, we're not rehashing that bullshit again. But at any rate, my point is that it made that money. Superman did 12.9 million yesterday on Monday, and the numbers.com has already updated the domestic box office numbers. So Superman right now is sitting at 137.9 million domestic, and which combined with the 95 million international box office, it's at 232.9 million worldwide. And why am I following this? Well, obviously because in the midst of this discussion, this is one of those cases where we do look for box office for, our original intent of looking at box office, which is, okay, how much does this guarantee a sequel or not? How much does this, and in this case, what does this do to the solvency of the DCU going forward, since this is the inaugural film? And we already heard what James Gunn said, that this movie, he said it was ridiculous to believe that this movie needed to make $700 million in order to be a success. And I think clearly, to me, the thing that squelched this whole debate, right? Anybody arguing about box office, the thing that squashed all of this and really gave us a definitive case of what was going to happen is the fact that David Zaslav made his statement the other day on, I don't know if this was on social media, but I saw it, like Culture Crave and the other regurgitators were posting it. He reaffirmed the commitment to the DCU. In fact, here, let me read his entire statement. So here's what David Zaslav, CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, officially posted on Sunday after the opening weekend box office numbers for Superman were officially released. Here's his entire statement. 3 years ago, I hired James Gunn and Peter Safran to reimagine and unify the creative direction of DC under one leadership team by breathing new life and excitement into one of the most iconic storytelling franchises in the world. James and Peter's commitment to honoring the legacy of the DC Universe while forging something new and enthralling is inspired. I remember my first meeting with James 3 years ago. He spoke about growing up in Missouri and how the characters of the DC Universe weren't just stories to him, they were like his family. His personal bond with these DC heroes was powerful, and I knew then that James was the right person to bring them to life. His love for the DC world runs deep, and it shines in every frame of his work. This weekend, we watched Superman soar as James Gunn's passion and vision came to life on the big screen. Superman is just the first step. Over the next year alone, DC Studios will introduce the films Supergirl and Clayface in theaters and the series Lanterns on HBO Max, all part of a bold 10-year plan. The DC vision is clear, the momentum is real, and I couldn't be more excited for what's ahead. That's David Zaslav's full statement. Now look, regardless of how you feel, regardless of how we feel about David Zaslav as a CEO and as a human being, put all that aside, right? No one is arguing, at least not on this show, that he's a good person and that he's all of a sudden in our good graces. No one is arguing that. He has done a lot of stupid shit since he's been in charge of Warner Bros. Discovery. We're not talking it. Never mind that. Put that aside for a second. The one good thing that we can say he's done to this point is he has created DC Studios, which is what I wanted for years, for DC to be its own autonomous studio instead of a rinky-dink division under Warner Brothers Picture Group. I never get tired of saying that, right? And I'm glad that that era is finally here. And he hired James Gunn and Peter Safran to shepherd that effort. And to me, posting this statement, regardless of how you feel about him, regardless of whether or not you trust him, posting this statement publicly after the opening weekend numbers is him doubling down. Because what else has he got, guys? Seriously. As far as the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, you need success because you have shareholders to answer to, and you already know that there are some of them that don't necessarily dig how much money you're making as a salary. That story came out about a month or so ago. So you need wins. You need success. And Warner Brothers has not been a bastion of success. None of the studios have necessarily been a bastion of success post-strikes last year. The strikes hurt them all because they were egotistical, money-grubbing bastards and thought that they could screw over the writers and the actors, and that did not work out for them whatsoever, and they're still recouping a lot of those losses. So he needs a win. Just like Disney and Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm and just like other studios need wins, right? He needs a win. And his best chance, by far his best chance, objectively speaking, for a win is with DC Studios, is with what James Gunn and Peter Safran are doing. He really doesn't have any other choice. What other franchise could he possibly rely on at this point for any type of success with Warner Brothers Discovery? He can't rely on Harry Potter. I know there's a new Harry Potter show coming out on HBO Max, and there's a ton of controversy surrounding that, especially with J.K. Rowling being the absolute subhuman piece of filth that she is, right? So that he can't rely on that. What else can he rely on? Sinners isn't going to get franchised. People have already made it clear that they don't want a Sinners sequel because they want Ryan Coogler to continue making original things, and he has said that he doesn't want to do a Sinners sequel. He's got to do Black Panther 3 over at Marvel Studios anyway. Okay, fine. So what else has he got? Nothing. He's got no choice. DC Studios is it. This has to work. This 10-year plan for the DCU has to work. So this statement that he posted on that Sunday, this is him doubling down. This is him reaffirming, okay, look, we had a good start. And the hype, I know he likes the hype. I know he likes the fresh critic score on the Hell site, Rotten Tomatoes. I know he likes the positive buzz. I know he likes all the quotes. And on some level, he probably likes all of the shit and the clips and whatnot being posted on social media. He's measuring all of that and he's going, oh, this is great. We can get our fans. We can really build our fan base around this. He's thinking that. I know he is, because he needs a win. Warner Brothers Discovery needs a big win, and this is their best shot for a big win. Right? So all the people that, we can't trust him because of what he did with Batgirl, the DCU could end up being another tax write-off. Well, only if this failed. And so far, it has not failed. And let's go ahead and dive into that. All the people that are proclaiming, oh, they know exactly what this box office is going to be going forward. First of all, we don't need to worry about the solvency of the DCU. It's here. It's happening. We're moving forward. Supergirl is in post-production. Remember, they finished filming. That movie is happening and will be released June of next year. The Clayface movie, that's in production. They're going to start filming that at some point later this year. Okay, that's going to happen. And we know Lanterns has been filming. Those things are going to happen. We're going to get at least 3 or 4 projects deep into the DCU. Okay, we don't have to worry about that. Superman has done its job out of the gate with respect to solidifying that. Okay, now, what about everything else with respect to Superman itself? All these people coming out saying, well, it only made 122 opening weekend. It didn't even beat Man of Steel's opening weekend. It'll be lucky. I saw this. I saw a guy on Threads, and, maybe I blocked him prematurely. I don't know, but we got into a little bit of a pissing match that I really didn't want to engage in. But I took issue, and John R. knows who this guy is, because I saw him because John posted on his response, right? The opening weekend numbers came out, and this guy goes, it won't reach 600 million. It may be 550 at best. And he said that Supergirl would outgross it. Now look, maybe that does happen. Maybe Supergirl does outgrow Superman next week, or next year rather. But making that type of prognostication 2 days in, right? And officially 2 days in, right? Because remember, all the preview stuff gets lumped into Friday and Saturday. This is Sunday he's posting this shit. That he doesn't think the movie is it's gonna struggle to get to 550, and it'll be lucky if it gets to 600 million. What? This soon, right? It's a 232.9 million now, 4 days in, right? And not for nothing, but around these parts, here in Michigan, like a lot of the theater chains, like my favorite theater chain, Imagine, they do the budget Tuesdays, right? And so a lot of people show up because it's cheaper ticket prices on Tuesday. One of my other coworkers is thinking, and I don't know if she's going to do it or not. I'll find out tonight, but she's thinking, this is the coworker that I've mentioned before that has seen Avengers Infinity War and liked it, but has no energy or has no burning desire to see Endgame. It doesn't matter to her if she finishes that storyline or not, right? She is as general audience as they come, and she is thinking about taking her, her husband or son to go see Superman tonight because it's Budget Tuesday. And she doesn't want to spend a ton of money on 3 tickets to go see that movie. And that's important to her. So she may end up going to see it. And if she does, she's going to be in a crowded theater. Because I went and looked because I'd been trying to figure out exactly when my third viewing of the film is going to be. And just for shits and giggles, I looked at theaters, different Imagine theaters, like the one that I go to, Palladium, and others, to see what it was like for Tuesday. And full theaters, guys. Full theaters. Not necessarily like, during business hours, but after 5 o'clock, full theaters. I'm like, well, wow, on a Tuesday in July. Tuesday, July 15th, and Superman's got full theaters, right? Like on day 5 or 6 of release. Okay. So to me, for all these box office prognostications, this is why I don't do predictions, because people that want to go ahead and proclaim, oh, it's only going to make this much. Hey, you know what? Go right ahead. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. But I would prefer to just wait it out and see exactly how it plays out. Because at the end of the day, the DCU solvency is not going anywhere. It's going to stay here. So now we're just trying to see exactly what this does for Superman and what this does for building the DCU brand as a whole among the audience. And the buzz is real. I talked about that earlier. The buzz is absolutely real. So the question is, how much does that translate to the general audience? And this could absolutely be a case. One of the things that I argued with the individual that I blocked on Threads is that person seemed to believe that it wasn't possible for the domestic numbers for Superman to outgross the international numbers, to which I said, oh, we've seen that happen. Black Panther did that. It was like a 50-50 split, and it was a slight edge domestic as far as Black Panther. Now, that film made $1 billion. I'm not saying Superman is going to make $1 billion. I'm not saying that at all. That's not a realistic expectation for Superman, who has never even... He hasn't even reached 700 million historically speaking. Man of Steel right now still holds that record. $670.1 million earned over the course of its run. Okay, that's as much as Superman has earned. He's not part of the $1 billion club. He could become part of the $1 billion club later with a sequel. But right now, the best case scenario comp that I have for Superman, truthfully, is Wonder Woman. Remember Wonder Woman 8 years ago? Remember when that released in 2017? That was at the beginning of June of 2017, and that opened to 103 million. Right, that was its opening weekend, and people were like, "Oh, that's nice. That's a solid start for Wonder Woman." And then they were all certain that it was going to get cut down by Transformers First Night a couple of weeks later, and then they were really certain that it wasn't going to last past Spider-Man Homecoming at the beginning of July. And yet, Wonder Woman stayed in theaters past both of those movies and made over $800 million because it had legs, it had longevity, and I will tell you what. When it comes to legs and longevity for a movie, buzz and positive feedback is a big part of that, right? Because the longer people are still watching it, the more that Warner Brothers and DC Studios will keep it in theaters. And if this movie is generating this much positive buzz already in 4 days, then just imagine the possibility of that stretching out even past Fantastic Four. I'm very curious now to see exactly what happens when Fantastic Four First Steps comes out a week from Friday. I'm very curious of that because I think it was a foregone conclusion, and people still believe it's a foregone conclusion that that's going to cut Superman's legs off immediately, and that audience that was all gung-ho on Superman is going to shift right back over to Marvel and join the Fantastic Four. I can't tell you I'm 100%, I don't know that that's the case. I don't. I'm not certain. Right now, Marvel Studios, at this point in time, they need a win. They need a win for this year, right? And I did say that when it comes to the 3 films they released this year, which I still think is too many because 3 movies a year is too many, and Disney still has not learned that lesson. Marvel Studios has still not learned that lesson. But the audience is going to pick one of them, and that's the one that they're going to show up for. It wasn't Captain America Brave New World, and it wasn't Thunderbolts. So the belief is it's going to be Fantastic Four First Steps. But what if it isn't? What if it isn't? What if people decide instead of seeing that movie, they're just going to go see Superman again? Or what if they're not interested in seeing a Marvel film because they're really enamored with what they saw and what they're hearing about Superman? I don't know, guys. I'm just spitballing here. I have no idea. For all I know, the people could be exactly right, and Fantastic Four First Steps drubs Superman in a couple weeks. Either way, Fantastic Four First Steps is going to be number 1. Like, it's going to take the top spot because that's its opening weekend, and Superman will be on its 3rd weekend. But the point that I'm making here is we need to see what Superman makes between now and then. It's got one more weekend to itself, right? And if it's making $12.9 million on a Monday, the first Monday, I want to see what it does Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, going into that second weekend on Friday. And this allows me to bring up the international numbers because one of the things that they've been talking about, and Dave talked about this, Dave the Film Junkie, and Scott talked about this as well, and I've seen some others, and I read a piece about it through Variety and Deadline about how the UK opening for Superman was way lower than they were expecting it was going to be. Generally speaking, a really strong opening weekend in the UK is somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 million, and Superman made $6.9 million in the UK, and that's considered significantly lower, right? So they're like, wait, what's going on? And so there's all these prognostications, why is it making less over in the UK? Are they not really Superman fans? There are people suggesting, well, they don't like a dumbed down. This is the haters, the gun haters, and the Superman film haters saying, well, they don't like their Superman dumbed down. So clearly they're not turning out for that, right? No, it might be a more simpler answer than that. The Deadline and the Variety pieces noted that this past week England has been experiencing a massive heat wave, and apparently, and I read this from some people over in England on some of the subreddits, the DC Cinematic subreddit, apparently a lot of those movie theaters don't have AC, which is insane to me. I don't know how you have a movie theater anywhere that does not have air conditioning during the summer. I don't give a shit where you're at. You could be at the North Pole, have air conditioning. What the hell? Buildings overheat. People need to not overheat when they go to a theater. So this heat wave apparently has been keeping people at home. And there are people in England that can attest to this, right? I assuming that they're telling the truth and that that's the case. And they're saying that it is affecting the totality of the box office over the UK, because even though Superman made $6.9 million in its opening weekend over there, what people aren't necessarily pointing attention to is that it still won the opening weekend in the UK. $6.9 million was the highest of any film in the UK last weekend. So that tells me that Superman was still the top dog in the UK, but maybe there is something to this heat wave. So I'm curious to see what the numbers look like, if there's any type of bounce back in the second week after this crazy climate change related, surely, heat wave in the UK is over. The same climate change that's causing all the crazy shit happening in New Jersey and the stuff in Mexico and all the disasters and whatnot. Yeah, climate change is real, people. I digress. At any rate, I'm in wait and see mode with respect to the money. I think the best case scenario for Superman is a Wonder Woman type scenario where it has the legs to get to somewhere between $700 and $800 million. That's the best case scenario. But regardless of that, whatever it ends up making, if it does end up making what the prognosticators are saying, where it's it'll struggle to get to 550, which I still don't think it's going to struggle to get to 550. It's already almost halfway to 550. It might be halfway to 550 by the time we get to the weekend. But even if it does get to that, it means nothing as far as the future of the DCU is concerned. They're going to, especially that one thing I read in a Variety piece that suggested, and of course, like I said, studios will never officially give you a marketing budget number, but it suggested that the marketing budget for Superman was only $100 million. And if that's the case, you combine that with a $225 million production budget, and you're talking about $335 million spent in marketing and production on this film, and you're already at 232.9, and you're only 4 days in. You're okay. You're good. So this is what I say. Between that and Zaslav, and then, of course, James Gunn, he posted his gratitude. He said he was very grateful for all of the outpouring and support. And another thing that he posted today that I wanted to bring up that was really cool, apparently, and this comes from the Wrap, and, I don't trust the Wrap personally, but James Gunn himself reposted this. So, if it comes from him and if he reposts this, then I'm going to take it for what it's worth, because he's the one sharing this. Apparently, he's happy with all the outreach and with all the great buzz that's been coming from this movie. But according to the Wrap, the Superman movie has led to more than a 500% surge in dog adoption interest thanks to crypto. I don't know who wrote this piece for the Wrap. Actually, no, here it is. Her name is Andy Ortiz. But apparently, the dog training app Woofs, Google searches for "adopt a dog near me" jumped up 513% after the opening weekend of Superman, while the more specific "rescue dog adoption near me" phrase rose by 163%. Those are Google searches, right? So that's interest in adopting dogs. And James Gunn, of course, is a massive proponent of dog adoption. His dog Ozu, that he modeled Crypto after, is an adopted dog, and I think he's got a couple of other adopted dogs and cats. He and his wife Jennifer Holland all have, like, they have animals. They got dogs and cats all over their home. He's taken a ton of pictures of them. He posts those on Threads, and for the last 2 years, every time he posts a picture of his dogs or cats, he's besieged with 50 questions about the DCU and about Superman and whatever, and that's never going to end. But either way, that's cool. That's really cool. That's what part of the buzz for Superman is doing. So look, the buzz is there, and as far as any box office prognostications, it's not going to affect the future of the DCU. The DCU is up and running and is going to continue. We don't have to worry about that. We're going to see the next part of it, at least for the next couple of projects for sure, and then we'll see what happens with those next couple of projects, whether it's Supergirl or Clayface or The Lantern Show, which is going to be an HBO show, also featured on HBO Max, but it will be considered an HBO original, so that's already a bump up, right? Because, and I'll get to the HBO original that has got some stuff to celebrate here shortly, but either way, I'm in wait and see mode with the box office. It could make as little as 550. It could make more than that. I don't know. We're 4 to 5 days in. Can we wait and see? And I'm clearly not interested in these pissing contests with respect to this movie against Man of Steel or any other Superman movie. And I don't care about adjusted for inflation. No. Those are all stupid, nonsensical arguments. I am grateful that Scott brought up those numbers and talked about the inflation, because there was some misconception in terms of the dollars and cents with respect to whether or not this was the highest grossing opening weekend for a Superman film. Okay, cool, fine, whatever. I don't give a shit about that, truthfully, going forward. I care about how Superman does as a film towards the hype for Superman, and really, beyond the solvency of the DCU, I really just want to see Superman catapult his popularity as a hero, because I really do believe that this current Superman film does a whole lot to dispel a lot of the narratives that we've heard about why people aren't Superman fans, right? One of the other things that James Gunn posted was he talked about how it was great to focus, after, he said, we've had a lot of super in Superman over the years, and he said, I'm happy to have made a movie that focuses on the man part of the equation, a kind person always looking out for those in need. And I think that focusing on that aspect of the character in this movie is what is finally making him relatable to the general audience. And, the fact that he's not considered all powerful, because he gets his ass kicked quite a bit throughout the film and has to go through the trials and tribulations with respect to that. And he's not boring. Those are the three complaints that we've heard generationally with respect to why people aren't Superman fans. That he was overpowered, boring, and unrelatable. And this new Superman movie destroys, pretty much obliterates all of those reasons. So that's what I want to see. I want to see Superman as a character ascend popularity to become a more popular hero within the general audience, similar to the Iron Man trajectory. And I saw somebody posting, they were talking about how David Corenswet's starting salary for this film, he's getting paid $750K for this film. Now, obviously, depending on how this movie does, he's going to be due for a salary bump. He and Rachel Brosnahan are both going to get salary bumps. This came up because Nicholas Hoult has the highest salary. I think his salary is somewhere like $10 million or whatnot. But he's been in more stuff, more bigger films, more franchise films. I mean, he was Beast in X-Men, and he was War Boy, one of the War Boys in Mad Max Fury Road, right? But they had a graphic where they compared what it was David Corenswet, Robert Downey Jr., and there was another actor, I can't remember who it was, but it was like, three actors that, essentially like started their franchises, if you will. And this is very, in that same vein, David Corenswet is pretty much the RDJ at this point, if you're really lining it up, because Robert Downey Jr. kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the first Iron Man film, and now David Corenswet is kicking off the DCU with Superman. So if Iron Man can make that ascension, and Iron Man was at a lower point of popularity than Superman was, right? Iron Man was a D-list Marvel superhero in 2007, and from 2008 on, he's become one of their heavy hitters. Superman is not D-list. Superman is at worst B-list, right? He might even be A- list, which ironically enough is the cinema score for Superman. But either way, he could be in that tier, and if he wants to get catapulted, not quite to Batman and Spider-Man level, but if he wants to get closer to that level, I feel like this movie could do a whole lot of pushing him closer to that level, so that when we get to the sequel, it'll be a more popular affair. It could make more money, right? What it could be like. Here's another comp to comp it to another Marvel film. This could be like Spider-Man: Homecoming. Remember, there was an expectation because Spider-Man hadn't joined the billion-dollar club yet either, with either Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield, right? And so there was speculation on whether or not Homecoming would do that, and it didn't. It made about 880 million, somewhere along those lines, right? But the next film, Spider-Man Far From Home, which was right after Avengers Endgame, that did break $1 billion. And of course, we know what No Way Home did, damn near $2 billion. But the point is that Homecoming was a jumping off point of success in the MCU, financially speaking, for Spider-Man. Superman could be the same for, like it could do the same for the Superman character for the DCU, where, whatever he makes this time in this first film could be the catapult, could be the catalyst for the sequel, whatever that is, and whenever that's going to happen in the DCU like pantheon, to make more money and to be a bigger hit, right? And that's the hope, that's the goal, that's what David Zaslav is banking on, that's what James Gunn and Peter Safran are betting on themselves on, and that's what we as fans are banking on. Those of us open-minded fans that enjoyed the film and are looking forward to the success, hopefully, of the DCU going forward. So yeah, all of that said, man, like it's all about just waiting and seeing exactly how it plays out. We're 4 to 5 days in. Like, if people want to make box office prognostications now so they can feel like they were right in the end, whatever it was, hey, that's your business. But I would rather wait and see, because I don't do the pissing contest, and I'm not worried about the solvency of the DCU, because they've made it very clear the DCU is solvent for the foreseeable future with respect to, future projects and whatnot. So there you have it. As much of a balanced perspective as I can give you on Superman's box office to this point in time. So we'll just wait and see, and check out the numbers.com more so than Box Office Mojo for updated numbers. Maybe we'll go to Box Office Mojo for the international updated, depending on how quickly the numbers updates that. But certainly for domestic numbers, it does seem like the numbers.com is much faster in that regard. So just throwing that out there as well. All right, before signing off for this week, I want to talk about the Emmys, because those nominations came out today, and the Emmys I don't necessarily pay like a ton of attention to, but this is the year to pay a bit more attention to it in our circles, because The Penguin got 24 Emmy nominations. That is ridiculous. It says that this is an article written by Anthony D'Alessandro at Deadline, and this was shared to us in our Squadcast media group by Scott. It says, Television Academy viewers didn't treat the Penguin like some waddling, buffoonish cartoon villain, rather as a high-end prestige series, which it was. The DC Studios HBO show swam toward 24 primetime Emmy nominations this morning, which is arguably the second best for a comic book series and the second best for a DC series after HBO's 2019 series Watchmen, which owned 26 Emmy noms and is still cited by the Guinness Book of World Records as the most successful comic book series in Emmy history with 11 wins. The Penguin's 24 nominations also outpegged the 23 noms earned by Disney Plus Marvel Studios' WandaVision back in 2021. How about that? 24 Emmy nominations for The Penguin. And I tell you what, it's got to win some of them, right? Like it has to win some of these Emmys. Let's see, what is it up for here? Kristen Milioti is up for lead actress in a limited or anthology series for The Penguin, and she's going up against some stiff competition. Cate Blanchett, Megan Fahey, Rashida Jones, and a Black Mirror episode, which that reminds me, I'm behind on Black Mirror. And Michelle Williams from, that's right, that show Dying for Sex, yeah. Colin Farrell, of course, nominated lead actor in limited or anthology series as well. He's going up against Stephen Graham for Adolescence, Jake Gyllenhaal in Presumed Innocent, which, is that the Apple TV Plus show? I think it is. Brian Tyree Henry in Dope Thief, and Cooper Koch in Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. Oh yeah, I heard about that. The Penguin is up for Best Limited or Anthology Series as well, so it's looking for that top dog. And I think a lot of the other nominations that it's for are more technical awards as well. But 24 nominations, it's got to win somewhere. And I don't know. Listen, I'm rooting for Colin Farrell. I'm rooting for Kristen Milioti. We'll see how that goes. But looking at all of these Emmy nominations, congratulations to The Penguin for that type of notoriety, and also to join the rarefied air, if you will, with a show like Watchmen. I mean, this is HBO. And this is like a microcosm of like what happens with Emmy nominations, because for the longest time, HBO dominated that category until Netflix started muscling in on them. And it's kind of been like a back and forth rivalry, especially, with the HBO Max days, that have been around for the last 4 or 5 years, like this whole HBO and Netflix jockeying for Emmy supremacy. And Netflix isn't so much like, they don't really have the supremacy anymore with respect to that. But there are a number of shows like Shrinking and Severance and the studio, if you will, that come from Apple TV Plus. So that's like the new heavyweight like streaming challenger as far as the Emmys are concerned is Apple TV Plus. And I have still yet to watch a single Apple TV Plus show. I think Slow Horses is another show that's been nominated for some Emmys as well, with respect to Apple TV Plus. But that's the big dog competition right now for HBO Max, a big streaming competition. And I have yet to watch a single show like on Apple TV Plus. And there's a lot. The list gets longer. I got to watch For All Mankind. I got to watch Foundation. I got to watch C. I got to watch Ted Lasso because people still won't shut up about that particular show. I got to watch The Morning Show. Like there's so many others. And then there's also Severance and Shrinking and Slow Horses and others, right? There's a lot. But I keep hearing about how amazing Apple TV Plus's quality is, subjectively speaking, with respect to their shows. So I expect that they're going to take home a lot of hardware as well. But it'll be interesting to see, that because they're going to be battling with The Penguin, they're going to be battling with The Last of Us, they're going to be battling with a couple of different HBO shows, like with respect to this, and also Hulu as well, because I think that one Paradise, Sterling K. Brown has been nominated from that show. That's a Hulu series. And then there's The Pit, which The Pit's HBO Max, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, there's a lot of battles here between streaming platforms, and then HBO is like the traditional cable/streamer that is in the middle of all this fighting, if you will. And then, of course, with respect to drama series, the big, of course, Slow Horses, Severance, The Pit, Paradise, Last of Us, The Diplomat, The White Lotus, and, of course, Andor. Now, look, I would love to believe that Andor is going to win this Emmy. And look, it's got a chance. It does have a chance. With respect to the political relevance of today, there is absolutely a chance for Andor Season 2 to win Best Drama Series. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Holding out hope. I mean, fingers crossed. That would be absolutely amazing if that show wins Best Drama Series for the Emmys. That would be great, right? But we'll see. I mean, and this is where, this is one of those times that, the Emmys, like it crosses lines with too much. Like usually when the Emmys come out, I haven't watched most of the shows, but I've watched Andor, I've watched The Penguin, right? So those are two big ones that take up a lot of the nominations. And then there's a bunch of these other shows. It's like, well, that's on my list. Got to check that out. So that's what I'm thinking I may try to do. I don't know. This is the famous last words, Ray trying to catch up on a show before he does another episode of Flightbox. I don't know. We'll see how that works out. Because it was between that or talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which season 3 premieres this Thursday. So I don't know. I still need to figure out exactly what I'm going to do with Thursday's episode of Flightbox. But I'm going to talk about a TV series. I know that much. I'm going to talk about a TV series and, deal with it in that sense. But either way, there's a lot going on here, and it's another feather in the cap for DC Studios to have all these Emmy nominations. Again, you would hope that Penguin would score at least a couple of these Emmys. And I don't know if it'll be Colin Farrell. I don't know if it'll be Kristen Milioti. I'm definitely rooting for them more than the others. And I'm sure that any of you that have watched the other shows, you might be like, well, I don't know. Some of these others, the other shows like might take the cake, right? Like Rashida Jones was just really good in that Black Mirror episode. I don't know. I'm not sure if you guys are saying that. Or maybe you really dug Stephen Graham in Adolescence. I heard some big stuff about that show. I don't know. Either way, like you guys, I like the fact that they're in a separate category, lead actor in a limited or anthology series, and they're not necessarily going up against some of the other heavier hitters, right? Like they're not going up against Severance. They're not going up against Andor or Slow Horses or anything like that. So like that's cool, like in that regard, because those are like regular shows that have a different category for lead actor and lead actress. All right, great. But yeah, this might be one of those occasions where I pay a bit more attention to the Emmys going forward. So yeah, great news for DC. DC is in great position. And I wanted to mention this really quickly too. I forgot to mention, because this article does talk about the Penguin getting all these nominations on the heels of Superman having a really good opening weekend. And I did want to mention this. This came up earlier, and I'm trying to see where I saw the clip of this. This looks like it was another press junket for Superman, and the interviewer asked him about DCU Batman, I think specifically DCU Batman and like other Justice League characters, and James Gunn went on the record as saying that the scripts for DCU Batman and Wonder Woman are being written right now, and he says that they'll immediately go into production as soon as he feels the scripts are done and good, and that they're really good, because he is really like doubling down on this concept of we're not doing the movie unless it's a really good script, unless it's a finished script, and that's one mark that he's really trying to make a difference with respect to what DC Studios does as opposed to what the MCU does, or what Marvel Studios does, right? Because we've seen them change scripts and go in without a completely finished script and do the assembly line process many times. And it worked for them over the years, hasn't been as successful for them in the last year or so. But either way, James Gunn doesn't want to do that. He wants a finished, solidified script. So, as far as him saying that the scripts for a DCU Batman and Wonder Woman are currently being written right now, there are people taking this to mean that, well, okay, there's the last nail in the coffin for all of you that want Pattinson to join the DCU. And it's not the last nail in the coffin, obviously, because even though he is making a clear line of demarcation and saying, yes, the script for the DCU Batman is not the same as the script for the Batman Part 2, which he said was finished a couple weeks ago, right? Like that big announcement that he and Matt Reeves both made, right? So he is establishing that there is a difference between the two, which I've said that from the beginning, because whatever ideas and designs that they had for the DCU Batman are going to be different than what Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson are doing in the Batman Epic Crime Saga. Yes, that is to be understood. But we got to wait until it actually goes into production. And I feel like not until they cast the DCU Batman will fans actually let go of the idea that Pattinson's Batman could join the DCU. And it's silly. I mean, look, they can feel however they want, but from my perspective, it's like, after seeing Superman, I would think it would be clear, abundantly clear, that, you know, that the world of the DCU, as we just saw in the Superman movie, or as people are going to see in the Superman movie, does not fit the Batman. It does not. The Batman does not fit in that world. The suspension of disbelief is too great. There is no way, and I'm not going to, there's spoiler elements that I'm not going to mention, but for people who have seen it, there are too many major spoiler elements in Superman that just will not fit in a gritty, grounded universe like the Batman. And yes, I know I'm the same person that said, well, there is suspension of disbelief because look at the detective vision and look at this and the gadgetry and all that. Yes, that is true, but not to the level of Superman. Superman has gone above and beyond a level of suspension of disbelief, even past that of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you want to merge that with what we just saw in the Batman. No. I still remain against that idea. And now I think this is another step towards solidifying that it's not going to happen that way. But, now we just got to wait for the Batman and Wonder Woman scripts to be finished, because yes, I want to see the Trinity. We have 1/3 of it. 1/3 of the Trinity has been definitively established with David Corenswet. Now we got to see who the Bruce Wayne's going to be. We got to see who the Diana Prince is going to be. Absolutely. We got to fill that Trinity out. And I'm not saying I need a Trinity movie immediately. I'm just saying I want to see who they're going to be in the DCU going forward to join up with David Corenswet for the awesomeness of this franchise hopefully is going to be for the next 10 years, right? The bold 10-year plan, as David Zaslav put it. But yeah, that's attached to all of this news and whatnot about the Penguin as well, because the Batman Epic Crime Saga is clearly still going to go on its own merry path, the way that it works as far as a side project, right? The Elseworlds project that is part of DC Studios but is not part of the DCU. So there you have it with respect to that. Didn't want to forget that. I wanted to mention that earlier, but absolutely wanted to talk about that as well and get that going. And that is going to do it for this particular episode of the Flightcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting theflightcast.com and listening to my pontifications. And as I continue to wax positively about the Superman movie, and as I still plan to figure out when I'm going to see it a third time, and hopefully all of you have seen it. If you have not, definitely go out and see it, and we'll continue to monitor exactly what it does and see how much Superman's popularity could potentially catapult with the general audience. If you have any thoughts with respect to that, or all this box office discussion, or your thoughts on the Superman hype, because it is clearly there and it is definitely building and definitely at a different point than I think we've ever seen it, truthfully, in the modern era for sure, right? If you have any thoughts on that, if you have any thoughts on the Emmy nominations or any of the other stuff going on with respect to the DCU, or if you have any other thoughts on movies, TV, and other assorted media that you wish to share on Flight Chat, you know where to find me on both Threads and Instagram at The Flightcast. You can post underneath the posting for this episode on the Flightcast YouTube page. I'm also on BLUESKY at Flightcast, There's the Flightcast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.